Hey folks, it's Dominique back with you. I'm going to do this podcast really quickly before I turn in for the night, and this is something that a few people have asked me about. We talked about this subject recently. I believe 2 episodes ago we discussed this very subject, and I'm going to get into it a little bit more in depth with you, but I'm also going to try to keep this podcast short because I have another one for you, as well as some live YouTube videos and recorded YouTube videos to release over this weekend. So what we're going to talk about is this sort of foolproof way of discerning whether somebody is a toxic individual. Now, many people have talked about this, and there are many good videos, articles, blog posts, and other discussions to be had about this subject. So basically, this is a very simple way for you to discern whether somebody is a toxic individual, and it's also a good way to get to know anybody, whether that person is someone you suspect might be toxic, whether it's someone that you just want to rule out that possibility with, or whether it's somebody that you think may have nothing wrong with them at all, and that you just want to get to know a little bit and kind of get to know what motivates them and what drives them. So again, as we've talked about before, this question is as follows. It could be in a job interview, could be somebody that you're looking to date or get to know as a friend. It could be for any reason. You don't have to ask this question with lots of background and context. You can actually just come out with it and kind of have it during an organic discussion. So, it goes something like this. How would you improve yourself? What things about you would you like to grow and or change? Seems like a really simple question, right? Well, it is to those of us who are not disordered individuals, to those of us who are in some way disordered. And again, we have talked many times in the past about the difference between personality disorders / disordered individuals and mental illness. Mental illness is something that is totally different than a personality disorder, and I certainly don't want anyone out there trying to eliminate anyone and everyone with any mental illness from their life, because chances are you're going to end up with very few people in your life if that's the case. We're not talking about mental illness, we're not talking about mental health or wellness, we're talking about personality disorders. So, those of us who are not on the spectrum for narcissism, sociopathy, histrionic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, are going to see this question as a fairly easy one to answer. And we're probably going to answer it honestly and with depth and relevance and just cogently in every regard. We're not going to come up with some silly platitudinous bullshit, really. We're going to come up with a genuine answer. So, as we've discussed before, here would be my answer. And I know that we have talked about this before, but you may just be tuning in for the first time, so bear with me. This would be my answer. If somebody asked me, how do you think that you can change or grow as a person? What do you want to change about yourself? Or how do you want to grow as a person? What can you improve about yourself? If somebody asked me any of those questions, which are really the same question, just put differently, my answer would be something like, I would go back and apologize to the young girl that I bullied in school. I never got the chance to do that because this person passed away shortly after we graduated high school. And obviously, that would have been something I would like to do, and I obviously feel that I've missed out on that chance, and that I would like for that person to know that I'm very sorry that I engaged in bullying with her, because that's not appropriate, it's not acceptable, and it's a very for lack of a better word, junior high behavior, but it's not appropriate even for kids that age, and I know that can have an impact on you in life in general, and it doesn't just stay with you in that moment. So I would apologize to that person. I would apologize, if I could, to one of my good friends who unfortunately took her own life. I feel terrible that prior just days prior to her doing that, I forgot her birthday. And that's not like me. That's not something I normally do. Every year I wished her happy birthday, and she wished me happy birthday. And obviously I feel very badly about that, and I would love to change that. So if we're talking about things that I would like to change, that I have done, that I can't change, those are a couple. If we're talking about things, behaviors that I could work on right now, I would like to continue developing my skills when it comes to active listening. I would like to continue developing my skills as somebody who is a coach and a psychotherapist. I would like to make sure that my clients always feel heard, and I always want to shoot for that goal because, their lives matter to me and their happiness matters to me. I want to continue to be a good daughter to my mom, and, I want to be there for my mom even more. My dad passed away recently, and, I want to be able to be there with my mom and for my mom when she'll have me, essentially. These are honest answers, right? If we're talking about things as far as like future goals, what we want, there are so many ways to answer that question. We could say something like, I'm looking to save money to buy a new home within the next 5 years. I'm looking to continue growing my business and hit a particular profit margin so that I can incorporate. Like, these are really honest goals, and they're things that are personal and just open and forthright, right? So this is how a normally functioning person would answer a question like that. They'd be detailed, not overly so, but honest. And they would probably give you, like I just did, a few examples. They would cite a few ways in which they would like to improve and change their lives. Now, here is how somebody with a personality disorder or who is just a toxic individual would answer a question like that. So if you're asking a toxic individual, hey, how could you grow, improve, or change as a person? What things would you like to see change about you as a person? They would say something silly and showboaty and goofy, and if they're really talented at subversion and at diversion, they might say something that sounds like a substantive answer and really isn't. It might be, like I mentioned before, a platitude of some sort. They might quote Buddha. They might quote a popular self-help guru. They might, again, like I've said before, they may say something like, well, I want to improve my running time to 4 minutes and 50 seconds per mile instead of 5 minutes and 1 second. And then they would say something like, well, in the last marathon, I placed first in my age group. And, I just want to continue being awesome and improving myself because I just keep breaking records and milestones. And hitting these milestones for myself is so important. And physical fitness is great. And I want to continue being gorgeous and perfect. So they might say something like that's a little goofy and a little silly and might sound slightly substantive, but it's just not. They might say something like, I want to sit and continue to enjoy silence. I want to explore silence a little bit more. Well, what the hell does that mean, right? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It has nothing to do with anything. And it certainly doesn't answer the question at hand, which is, what would you improve about yourself? What would you like to see change about you? And what could you do to make that happen? What are some things you regret that you would like to go back and change if you could? That really doesn't answer that question at all. So you're going to hear things that are very platitudinous. You're going to hear things like, I would pray for world peace. I would pray for world hunger. I would hold everybody's hand and have a giant prayer circle. #blessed. They would say something really, like I said, that talks around the issue that almost sounds like there's some substance there, but there's not. again, notice the difference between what I said earlier and between those answers that I just gave you that a toxic person would give you. So I touched on very personal areas of my life. I touched on actual things that I would like to change about myself. And then compare and contrast that with the answers like, I would like to sit in silence more. I would pray for world peace. I want to improve my mile time in the marathon because I'm so great anyway, and I want to become even more awesome. So having something like that be compared to, I want to continue to be a good listener, and I want to improve my active listening skills. I wish that I could go back and change the fact that I wasn't there for my friend before she passed away. These are things that are vastly different. So being able to suss out those answers, compare and contrast, and say, okay, here's a substantive answer, and here is an answer that is lacking in substance, is really important. So although this is an absolutely foolproof way to see if somebody is a toxic individual, I want you to be mindful of how you're interpreting the answer. You might hear something, and especially to the quote-unquote untrained ear, somebody who doesn't deal with problem personality types and those who are in relationships with problem personality types every day might hear something like, oh, I want to pray for world hunger, and think, oh, that's so sweet. They want to make a difference. Well, no, that's not what they said. They said they would sit around and pray or set an intention for world hunger to be healed. They said nothing about actually going out and doing something about world hunger. They didn't say, I'd like to go to the food shelter, the food pantry or the homeless shelter and donate my time and my energy, or I'd like to go to the food pantry and I'd like to donate. I'd like to be part of an effort to donate to the food pantry, for instance. They wouldn't give you any substance. It would be, I'm going to set an intention for, I want to pray for. Or it would be something like, I'm so great at such and such already, and I want to become even better at it. Well, not a real answer. So do be mindful of the substance of the answer you're getting. It's so important if you're going to keep away from toxic people. It's really important to be able to identify a platitude and a blanket statement that really doesn't actually touch on anything important. So some ways to do that without getting too far off into this other subject, it is related, and I want to talk about it a little bit. Some ways to identify a platitude are the person who is throwing the platitudes at you is going to be speaking in broad terms. They're not going to be speaking in personal terms. This is really the hallmark of narcissism and sociopathy, in fact, and histrionic personality disorder. So, for instance, somebody with a disordered personality type, or somebody who is just toxic in general, might say something like, well, many people are out there in the world trying really hard to set good intentions for those of us who are struggling with hunger. So again, it almost sounds substantive. It almost sounds like this person is saying, I am going out there and volunteering at homeless shelters or at food drives or what have you. But they're not saying that. They're trying to make it seem like that's what they said without actually coming out and saying that. They're discussing something that is lacking in substance. Their answers are going to be broad. It's never going to be, I feel this way. It's either going to be, I accomplished this, or it's going to be, many people like to do this. It's never going to be, I feel this way. This is how I feel. I'm feeling this. I see that you're feeling that. It's never going to be those specific personal terms. It's always going to be general. it's always going to lack substance, and it's always, again, going to be something along the lines of, well, it would be great to set an intention for world peace. Okay, would it be great? What are you personally doing to work toward world peace? What are you doing in your neck of the woods, in your, little slice of America or whatever country you're living in to work toward that goal? It's great to use these blanket statements. It's even better to talk about what you personally are planning on doing. So when you ask them a question like that, be prepared for vague, platitudinous answers, and be prepared to hear stories about what many people would like to do or what many people need. And if you're going to be hearing personal stories of victory and how awesome this person is, it's always going to be, I experienced. It's never going to be, I feel, or I notice that this person is feeling this way or that way. It's always going to be, look at me, I did this, I experienced this, or it's going to be that very global, non-specific, well, many people would like to set an intention for brotherly love. Okay, great. You said something just now that was so lacking in substance that you may as well have not opened your mouth up to speak at all because you didn't actually communicate anything. So being able to tell the difference and being able to discern between substance and just nonsense and platitudes is really, really important. So when you are asking a question like, how would you like to, or would you think that you could or should change as a person? How could you grow? How could you move forward as an individual? It's important to be able to discern, what kind of an answer you're getting. Because you might hear something, again, the untrained ear might hear something like, well, many people would like to set an intention for world peace and no more children going hungry. Okay, great. But what did you just say? You didn't say anything about yourself or how you wanted to change, grow, or move forward. So I'm confused. What is your answer? Right? So being able to discern is really 99% of the issue here. It's great to ask the question, but knowing how to interpret the answer is really important. And for instance, if you're talking to a narcissist or a sociopath or even just a toxic person in general about something that you feel they've done wrong, if you're essentially accusing them of something, which, by the way, don't. You've got to be very careful about how you approach things like this with a toxic person. You don't want to come out and outright accuse that person of being disordered or of wrongdoing. You want to talk to them like you would a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a child that's just starting to develop their language and their ability to process, right? So anyway, if for whatever reason you are able to witness a toxic person being accused of some sort of wrongdoing, and oftentimes someone who's toxic will take just a very benign statement that has nothing to do with accusation as an accusation. If you ever witness them being accused or feeling as if they're being accused, you're going to be able to discern, again, whether or not this person is for sure a cluster B or a toxic individual, because when they're accused, they're going to respond the same way that they might respond to that question that we talked about earlier. They're going to respond with very non-specific answers. They're going to, let's say they were accused of stealing money from a cash register if they work at Kmart or something. Let's say they work at a big box store. They were accused of taking money from the cash register, and you're witnessing this accusation and this back and forth. You're going to see them talking to their supervisor or their accuser with lots of wild kind of hand gestures if they're narcissists, or with just a very cold, dead sort of look in their eye if they're sociopaths, and they're always across the board going to say things like, well, how could you accuse someone of doing something like this? Most people would never take money from the cash register. Well, you can see that they didn't address the fact that they actually took money from the cash register. They diverted and they said something about, quote unquote, someone being accused of taking money, or how dare you accuse someone of doing this? Well, someone isn't being accused. You're being accused. How do you answer that accusation? This is something that you will notice a lot with our current president. When accusations are made, this individual speaks in a very non-specific sense. He uses wild hand gestures. His tone of voice fluctuates quite a bit. He looks up and to the right very often, which does indicate that that person is fabricating their answer. And that's also a good thing to pay attention to when you're asking somebody how they can change as a person, how they'd like to move forward and change as a person. If their eyes kind of fluctuate and go off to the right, especially up to the right, to their right, not your right, by the way, you can be fairly certain that they are fabricating their answer. If they're recalling a memory or genuinely thinking about something that they have thought about before, they'll be looking up and to their left. So it's fairly easy to kind of use these guidelines to discern whether somebody is being truthful or not with you, and whether they're speaking to you from memory or whether they're constructing something right there in the moment. Now, of course, if there's something really interesting going on behind you to that person's right, I certainly wouldn't draw any conclusions about why they're looking over there. Obviously, if there's a cute baby or there's somebody causing a fuss right behind you to that person's right, don't take that to mean that they're lying when they're talking to you. This is something that is just a reflex action. So assuming that they're pretty involved in their conversation with you and nothing crazy is going on behind you, notice where their eyes are going when they're answering this question. So really quickly, back to somebody who is being accused of wrongdoing. You do notice a lot when our current president speaks, again, to like the accusations about Russian interference with the election, to various accusations about his conduct with women. You're going to notice him speaking in that very non-specific sense. He's going to say, well, I don't know how you could accuse a person of doing something like that. Or he's going to totally change the subject and say something like, well, everybody loves me and everybody, thinks so highly of me. Okay, great. We're glad everybody thinks highly of you. And we're glad that you're concerned that a person is being accused of this, that, and the other. You're still not answering the question. You're not answering the accusation. And you're not answering it for yourself. You're diverting to another subject. So, breaking it down again, diverting to another subject, being nonspecific, using platitudes, being either totally dead shark eyes, no movement at all, or using wild gestures and getting crazy with it are definite signs that this person is a toxic individual, particularly when the question comes up regarding how can you grow or change as a person? How would you like to change, move forward, and grow as a person, right? However you want to phrase that. Asking the person how they can grow and change, these red flags are going to really come up for that one. Because a narcissist, a sociopath, a toxic or disordered person feels in their mind, genuinely deep down, I think that there is a major lack of self-esteem, but on the surface, this mask that they sort of put on and wear and want everybody to buy, that mask shows everybody basically that I am such an amazing person. I shouldn't be questioned. How dare you think I should change something about myself? That's what they want us to see. They want us to see that overly confident, absurdly, ridiculously overconfident person that thinks, how dare anybody think I could ever grow or change? Of course, as I mentioned, deep down, I think there are many other issues at play, including a genuine lack of self-esteem and of identity. I think there's just no true identity for these folks, which is really sad if you think about it. But because of the facades that they wear, they're very touchy about being challenged. And in fact, they think many times that just a benign question like that is a challenge or an accusation. And it's not. That's a very fair question to ask anybody, particularly somebody you're trying to get to know, right? How do you want to grow or change as a person? Yeah, that's pretty obvious and pretty benign, right? It's not an accusation. It's not a barbed comment. It is a fairly obvious thing to ask someone. So being mindful of diverting, of being nonspecific, of eye movement to the right often when they're talking, of using words that distract from the subject at hand, of, again, being nonspecific when it comes to being self-referential. If they're being accused of something, watch them stop being self-referential real quickly. If they're not being accused of something, they're going to be very self-referential, but it's never going to be about feelings. It's never going to be about, I feel this, I'm feeling this, or I'm noticing that you might be feeling this. It's always going to be, I want this, I did this, I saw this, I heard this. Almost like a 6 or 7 year old kid that hasn't developed their concrete reasoning skills yet. So I hope that helps you to discern. And I hope that helps those of you who are asking people these questions to discern how to answer it. So again, like an I feel statement, or, I did this thing that hurt somebody and I wish I could change that. Or I want to grow and change by developing my listening skills, stopping interrupting people, whatever, what have you. Saving money and not spending money on Starbucks all the time. Guilty as charged, by the way. These are genuine answers. Things that are very subjective and very non-specific and either ridiculously self-referential and unfeeling, or absolutely non-self-referential when it comes to accusations. These are the way that sociopaths, narcissists, and toxic individuals behave. So when it comes to praise, when it comes to discussing basically any other topic that isn't an accusation of any kind or a deep question, they're going to be very self-referential, but it's not going to be the deep stuff. It's not going to be, I feel. I notice that you're feeling. I see that you're feeling this way. I hear you when you say this. It's not going to be those emotionally colored, deep, ways of being self-referential. They're going to be very cut and dried, very surface. I did, I want, I saw, I heard, right? So I hope that I've kind of drilled this in enough for you guys, and that you have been able to easily separate the sort of deep, genuine, personal ways that somebody who has empathy and compassion would respond to that question versus the very subjective, non-specific, platitudinous ways that somebody who's disordered or toxic would respond. I do hope that helps you. And, let me know if you have any questions. And if you are dealing with somebody who is a toxic individual, please feel free to continue browsing through my YouTube channel, because there are some really great resources there for you. And continue searching that term in YouTube, because there are some really great coaches and therapists and psychologists out there who are putting out free information for people like you. And if you're looking for more personalized coaching, psychotherapy, please feel free to contact me at my email address below. Take care of yourselves, be well, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful night. Thanks for listening.